Hola, que bueno, mi gente. OJ22 already in the building. Make sure to hit that like and sub as you come in. Hit the like button as you come in. And feel free to leave comments on stuff you want me to talk about because I'm trying to get off of the negative stuff and more on the positive stuff. So comment section, let me know what you want me to talk about today, and we can get into that as well. But Broner pulling out of the fight with Figueroa. Oh, man. Chicano Prophet in the building. My boy Punch Perfect Boxing in the building. I always appreciate you swinging through. My man, love your channel. Broner pulls out the fight with Figueroa. We got good news that happened yesterday. Ring Magazine did something good with this Usyk versus Joshua fight this weekend, and I'll be getting into that after I touch on the Teofimo fight, after I touch on the Broner news that just dropped a couple hours ago. And these are all reports. Remember, PBC hasn't dropped anything yet. I was just on PBC's Twitter site, and PBC has mentioned nothing about Broner pulling out of the fight. What you think they would, right? They're the promotional company. You think they would have got ahead of this? You think they would have been the one to drop the news instead of reporters dropping the news? And if the reporters dropped the news 4 hours ago, you'd think that the PBC would have mentioned something about it at this point. Haven't. And this shows you what the promotional companies, how they feel about you. Because I bet on Figueroa over the weekend. The reason I bet Figueroa Saturday, and I like this fight. I thought it was a toss-up fight, and I thought that Figueroa was undervalued at plus 180. I thought he was undervalued at plus 180. But I was hearing a report. Some people DM me on Twitter who know things and telling me that, hey, there's some issues going on with Broner's camp. I know you like the bet, so you might want to jump on that. And I did Saturday. And I still haven't gotten credited my plus 180 bet on Figueroa by Caesars. And I'm not worried about that because I know I will. Caesars is a reputable betting site. They're going to credit me the money once this fight is officially canceled. But the fact that it was reported 3 hours ago by reputable reporters, 3-4 hours ago, that this fight is off and is still up on betting websites, and people are likely still betting on this fight who don't know that the news has been broken, tells you where Premier Boxing Champions is at. You would think that they would convey this to us as boxing fans. I was interested in Broner versus Figueroa. If I'm not on Twitter, if I'm not following the likes of Coppinger, Raphael, Steve Kim, I might not know this news. If I'm just a boxing fan who doesn't go on boxing Twitter, which I know guys like that. Premier Boxing Champions on their website, on their Twitter account, Facebook account, none of it. They have not announced the news that this fight is off. And it's noon here. And this news broke 7:30, 8 o'clock this morning. That's where we're at with the PBC. Wheelchair Man John in here. Always appreciate you coming through, man. Dan Raphael put out a tweet saying confirmed he's got to stop playing. I thought Spence Bud was confirmed. That's another thing. It's just the fatigue of Spence versus Crawford. It's just the fatigue. I had some interesting conversations because I had a bunch of people over from the neighborhood at a party Saturday night, and just they're all UFC fans, and it's just frustrating to hear them talk to me about how much boxing sucks. And I'm just telling them, like, dude, just stop. Just stop. I enjoy boxing. You're not going to get me to stop watching boxing, but I already know the business sucks. You don't have to tell me. I know. But it's just days like this where it's just not a functioning sport. It's like, come on. And then the Spence versus Crawford fight, these two dudes have been in the top two in the division for 4 years. And now we're on day 270-something of Terrence Crawford being a promotional free agent. You told him for 4 years that the reason he can't get the fight is because he didn't step across the street. Now he's been across the street for almost damn near a year. Fight still not made. Hopefully they get it made. Let's see what we got from the comments section. Was really looking forward to Broner and Figueroa more than Joshua and Usyk. I don't know about that, but I was looking forward to the fight. I like Broner versus Figueroa because it was a 50-50 fight, in my opinion. But here's what happened with Broner versus Figueroa, in my opinion. And to the dudes on Twitter, I'm just trying to help. I'm just trying to help out there. You're not going to get any traction. You're not going to get anywhere questioning Broner's mental illness, whether it's real or not. You're not going to get any headway there because you're going to be attacked on Twitter for even questioning it. Even though you're right for questioning it, I understand why you're questioning it. We're 5 days off from a fight. I went on Ticketmaster StubHub yesterday to see how the fight was selling. The whole top of a 7,000-seat arena was taped off. Weren't selling there. And then you saw blue dots everywhere. And then anytime you see like the first two sections have sold out, they're papering the first two sections. And then the third section had a bunch of blue, which means it wasn't selling. So this fight just wasn't selling. And what Broner was realizing as this went on, remember Broner's outrage at Al Heyman 6-7 weeks ago with the press conference announcing the fight? He's like, dude, you're not even giving me an in-face press conference, a proper press conference for Adrian Broner. We're doing this on FaceTime. I'm Adrien Broner. So Adrien Broner at that point started to realize that the market is treating me differently. My last fight did not do well in the ratings. They got me doing a FaceTime promotional event to announce the fight. And now Broner is realizing as weeks go on that the tickets aren't selling. It's probably tough for him to make 140, which I've been saying for a while. You dudes who think he's going to campaign at 140, you got another thing coming. He started talking about exhibition matches, trying to talk Floyd into an exhibition match. So the writing was on the wall everywhere, but the market is telling Broner where he is as a fighter, as an event, as a guy who sells can't sell at this point. Broner 2022 is different from Broner 2017, is different from Broner 2012. The market eventually gets bored with dudes. You see it everywhere. You see it in the music industry. You see it in sports. Eventually the market gets bored with you. And then guys who hang on too long, they start to see where they're at. It's like the musician who holds on too long. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, he was selling out arenas. Now he's playing bar rooms. Just held on too long. And Broner's that dude right now. He's realizing he doesn't have a market. The only market available to him right now is playing a gatekeeper for up-and-coming fighters trying to come up the division. As a B-side fighter has been who has a name. That's Broner's market right now. That's his lane, and he refuses to do that. He thinks he's going to come in here, be an A-side, sell 7,000 tickets in Hollywood, Florida. It just wasn't happening. The tickets aren't selling, all that stuff. So you have every right to question the timing of this. You have every right to say, hey, wait a second now. He announces 5 days before the fight, a fight that wasn't selling, that he's mentally ill, mental illness. And we all need to be careful with the mental illness thing. Yes, I understand. But it's okay to question the timing, question, hey, why didn't he announce his mental illness 2 weeks ago, 7 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, 5 days before the fight? And Omar Figueroa, who knows about mental illness because he suffers from mental illness, is saying, hey, and who else? Who is in a better spot to criticize what Broner is doing right now than a guy who he's fighting who suffers from mental illness and saying, hey, I'm still fighting. You're pulling out 5 days before the fight. I'm calling BS. Give me some proof. And what I'm telling Figueroa and other dudes on Twitter questioning this, though, is you have every right, but you need to realize you're not going anywhere with it because you no longer have to show proof of mental illness. You're qualified enough to apparently consider yourself mentally ill. So it's just not going to go anywhere. It's just not going to go anywhere. I will believe Fury is actually retired when he vacates the WBC belt, and we're going to be talking about that after I get on the Teofimo fight. I'm going to be talking about that because I love what Ring did in WBC, not as much. The PBC has an a statement something is up. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, and people are telling me things in DMs of what's going on. I know that the fight is off. The fight's definitely off. And I'm hearing rumblings about why the fight is likely off. But what I'm saying is you can't question any of it. Once mental illness, once that term is thrown out there, it's done. It's done. There's no questioning it. It's another thing in the long line of obstacles that are in the way of fighters getting in the ring and fights being made. We talked about network execs, promotional outfits signing long-term deals with network execs, promotional outfits signing long-term deals with high minimums for fighters. And now promotional execs are telling us on Twitter openly, transparently, that either you buy your fighter on pay-per-view or you're not going to see him active. That's what they're out there telling us the past couple of weeks. So you already have those obstacles. You got cross-promotional obstacles on top of cross-network obstacles, on top of all of these other obstacles, on top of high minimums for fighters not wanting to be active, fighting once per year, fighters feeling entitled to fighting mismatch and sparring sessions on main events just because they're coming off of a loss, and fans agreeing with this stuff. A growing number of fans agreeing with this stuff. And on top of that, over the past year or two, you've had COVID. And on top of that now, you've got a growing number of fighters pulling the mentally ill card, whether it's warranted or not. I'm not going to question it. It's another obstacle in the way of fighters getting in the ring. It's an alibi, whether warranted or not. I'm coming off of a loss. I lost because I was mentally ill. 5 fights from 5 days from now, don't really want to fight. I'm mentally ill. You know, I'm putting myself in a tough spot right here by even talking about it. But what I'm saying is we're fighting a losing battle with this. We can't question it. Once mental illness is thrown out there, it's over. The conversation's over. It doesn't matter anymore. Warranted or not, whether it's a day before the fight, 5 days before the fight, doesn't matter. It's over. Conversation's over. Teo getting some criticism and some praise, and he deserves both. This was a mixed bag. I can see both views, but there's something positive is that he wants to do a quick return and fight. And yes, you are absolutely right about that, Chauncey, in the building. Dante's Cheeseburger Nation will blame it on the Mexicans. See why. Salute to the chat. Poto Sur Central BXO. It's true the sport has fallen. It's failing its fans. And it is, man. It's failing its fans. My boy on Twitter, Tyrese, appreciate you coming through, man. Appreciate you coming through. Appreciate everybody. If only boxing gave the consumer a consistent product. That's right. Logan Little, Broner is a fraud. And it's a mixed bag with Broner because I like what I've said so many times. Just speaking about the history of Broner. Let me check something real quick. I got to check an email real quick. Let's see. Tomorrow. Okay. I've said for a while throughout Broner's career, he's a net positive by far for the sport of boxing. Not a Hall of Famer in my book. Was never a top elite fighter in my book. They made the mistake. They didn't make the mistake because they fooled the market for a long time in promoting this guy. And I said it back then. I was saying it 10 years ago on here. Terrence Crawford's a dude to look out for. They're both coming up through the same weight classes. One's being promoted much heavier than the other. Broner was promoted as the pound-for-pound talent. Terrence Crawford was not. And everybody was pointing to Broner as the next Mayweather. I'm saying, no, it's not that. The dude's too inconsistent in the ring. Can't mix offense with defense, flat-footed, gets hit a lot, only fights in spurts. So it was easy to see, but they were promoting him. They were packaging him wrong. He was an exciting fighter. He's a fun dude to follow. Entertainment brings WWE value to the sport. All that is great. I love it. But they rub people the wrong way by promoting him as a top-level, top 5 pound-for-pound elite fighter, and he was never that. Never that. He should have never popped up on the top 10 pound for pound ranking. So that's the mixed bag. That's why it rubs people the wrong way. And then the inconsistency as time went on. And then Broner realized at some point that he's not going to be pampered anymore. And the market got bored with him. PBC is not going to pamper him the way that they did 7, 8, 9 years ago when he was weight bullying people coming up in the lower weight classes. And remember when Broner was missing weight in fights and saying, I don't even care about making the weight. And PBC had to come out there and cap for him. And then he had to pay penalties on the backside of that. Broner's realizing now that he's not going to be pampered and the market doesn't care anymore. The market has other heels out there who are in their prime that they can market, and the market will buy. Broner's past it. So Broner's lane right now is to serve as a gatekeeper at 147, really, because a gatekeeper at 147 with the name is much, much needed. Much, much needed. And Broner's not giving us that. He's not giving us that. He's trying to get out there and say, I'm still an A side. I'm still Adrian Broner. And the market's telling him, you're not. You're not. You're Adrien Broner, but you're not Adrien Broner. Rolly calls him out, and all of a sudden he has mental issues. I heard another rumor about that as well, that there's a possible Broner versus Rolly fight brewing. I'll believe it when I see it. I don't know, but what a circus act that would be. Does anyone know the start time of Usyk-Joshua? The main event will start right around, I think I saw 4 p.m. Central will be the main event walk time. So do with that what you want. I think you're West Coast, Chauncey, so that would be 2 o'clock your time. So for me, it's 4 p.m. Central. I remember 10 years ago when people were comparing him to Mayweather. That's right. That's right. Box Talk 101. Shout out Box Talk 101. If AB tells me he has mental illness, I'm gonna believe him. LOL. And a lot of that too. A lot of people are saying I already knew he had mental health issues. So, but the thing about it is 5 days before a fight, coming out and announcing it and saying. So I get it. It's just what I'm trying to tell people out there. I guess my main message is you can't win with this. You can't. It's just another obstacle now in the way of us getting the fights we want. And you're not going to go out there on Twitter and question if a fighter has mental illness or not, because you're going to get called all kind of names. It's just it's a non-starter. It's a non-starter. I understand why people are doing it. I'm doing it in my head, but I'm doing it in my head because outwardly you're just going to get destroyed. You're going to get raked over the coals because there are a lot of people carrying weight and water for these fighters out there. With AB's track record, who can believe this? Broner is a sucker. Unless you're Ryan and question away. I thought you were trying to be positive today. I'm trying, man. I'm trying. AB was burning money. Yeah, he's burning money for sure. That's what I'm talking about. If you look at the ticket sales, wouldn't be surprised if Joshua pulls out because of mental illness. Don't do that. Don't do it. Don't put those vibes out into the world. Don't put those vibes out into the world. Hold on 1 second. I got to send an email. Yeah. Sorry, my email. Call me at an email time. So shout out my boy Bruce Gas in the building. So that's where we're at with Broner. I mean, it is what it is. We can't question what's going on with him. He's had his time. His time is no longer. The market has pulled this card. PBC hasn't announced that this fight is off. And what a more boxing thing to happen, right? And what a more PBC thing to happen than 3-4 hours ago, the A side of your main event pulls out of the fight. And 3 to 4 hours later, it's still not announced that the A side of your main event has pulled out of the fight. Go on Twitter right now. Go on PBC's Twitter if you have a Twitter. Go on PBC's website and see. The last tweet they had about Adrien Broner was 16 hours ago promoting the fight, promoting Adrien Broner. And now the A side of your main event has pulled out of the fight. Everybody knows it. Reputable organizations, reputable writers are saying the fight is off. that they're bringing in a replacement, and PBC still hasn't announced any of this. Any of it. What a more boxing thing to happen. PBC. You're putting some money down on the fight. I put money down on Figueroa plus 180. And I'm more convinced than ever that would have paid for me. Figueroa is going to win that fight, man. Figueroa was going to beat Broner. Not anymore, though. And the fight is still up on betting websites right now. People are still betting on this fight who likely don't know the news. And I still haven't been credited for my bet for plus 180 Figueroa. I know I will be. Caesars is a reputable website. They'll give me my money back. They'll credit me, but I'm just saying it's not a good look. It's just not a good look, man. Like transparency, having a relationship with your fans. Be out there. This was announced 4 hours ago. 4 hours ago. And it's still up. Still up. Mental health as no marquee value is a deadly combo. Yeah. I was talking about the fight, though. And yeah, the fight. And I'll be talking about Usyk versus Joshua, too, all day, every day this week. Starting off in about 15 minutes when I talk about what Ring did over the weekend for this fight. I bet plus 170 Usyk on Saturday. I pulled the trigger. The prop bets came out. I pulled the trigger on plus 170 Usyk. And as of right now, the betting odds are still the same, the prop bets. So plus 170 Usyk by decision. Usyk by decision. So as the week goes on and I see how these guys look, I'll either hedge that or I'll keep pounding that plus 170 Usyk by decision. Because right now it's Usyk is minus 200 and Joshua is plus 170. That's on the main line. But if you look at the results, prop bets, plus 170 Usyk is the most likely scenario. And I think anytime you have a rematch in which you don't think much is going to change, and the result of the first fight was decision, and then you get that same result on the plus line in the second fight, I think you jump on that. I think that's a smart play. I don't see this fight playing out much different as the fight goes on. Early it will, but as the fight goes on, I think it's going to be much of the same. So I'm jumping on Usyk plus 170. I think that's a smart play here by decision. They lost Paul versus Rockman and Broner versus Figueroa. Is it God saving us from the AIDS of boxing schedule? Are you telling me there's a treatment for AIDS now? Showtime is either going to pull boxing or fire Espinoza. They're curing AIDS? Is that what's happening? There's a cure for boxing AIDS? Yeah, the Showtime schedule was boxing AIDS. That was boxing AIDS. And yeah, I mean, a couple fights falling through. I'd rather just good fights, though. Broner versus Figueroa, though, was a good fight on paper. Like, that's an even odds good fight. I thought that was a toss-up fight. And to me, Broner, if Broner packaged right, he's a net positive for the sport. He's a positive for the sport. I like when Broner is just packaged as a fun fighter who's going to bring some trash talk, and he's going to be matched well. And that's what this was. And that's what I enjoyed. But Broner's pushing back on that. He's like, I don't want to be packaged that way. I want to be packaged as a great fighter. I want you to treat me. I want you to get down and treat me like Adrien Broner. And he's realizing that the market doesn't look at him that way anymore. I put AJ plus 345. And that, that's a smart bet. Put a little bit down on AJ plus 345. You think something else is going to happen. And you got good odds. And that makes sense because the odds went down from around plus 350 to all the way down to plus 200. And that's because smart bettors like yourself were pounding that line because they saw it as too wide. And now it's closer odds fight because people are giving AJ that respect as a former champion. They're giving him the respect as a guy who has been in a rematch before and made the proper adjustments and won the rematch. They're giving them the proper respect as a guy who came into the first fight as a favorite. And maybe, just maybe, he overlooked Usyk, or maybe, just maybe, he had an off night. You got to throw all that out there and see how it plays. And this line has been solid, locked in for about 5-6 weeks now. Hasn't moved. Hasn't moved. I think they got it right now. I think they got it right. It's tough if you look at the odds to see where to play this right now. It's tough to see where to play it. Teofimo Lopez, though, let's get into that. Beat a heavy bag, won a sparring session, minus 3,000 favorite. Those of us who saw this fight when it was announced, we saw it for what it was. It was just getting Teofimo back on his feet. And it's sort of the opposite of what we saw with Mick Conlan, right? Mick Conlan loses by disastrous knockout, carried out the ring on a stretcher, 12-round battle. 6 months later, he goes in there with a puncher. Although past it, Mariaga was much more of a live dog than Pedro Campa, who just didn't have anything that was going to give Teofimo any kind of problems. Didn't have it. Just a wide odds fight. Was going to be ugly, and it was going to be Teofimo all day. The over-under was 4.5. That's why I think Teofimo, if anything, underperformed in this fight for me. And I know people aren't going to like me saying that, but there's just nothing you're going to find out from this fight. And I said it last week. That's why I didn't talk about it much. It's one of those main events that served its purpose. It gets people talking about Teofimo again. As Chauncey said earlier, though, the good thing about Teofimo is this is August. He wants to come back December 10th. Why is that good? One, it's good because it gets him fighting a second time in the calendar year. He only fought once in 2021. We know the whole debacle there. And I was worried he was only going to fight once in 2022, coming off the Lomachenko loss. So that's a negative. Hasn't been active since the Lomachenko fight. Has been all over the place, both outside and inside the ring. After the Lomachenko fight, after you beat the arguable universal pound-for-pound recognized universally pound-for-pound king in Lomachenko, you'd expect momentum, right? You'd expect momentum, and that never happened. The momentum was stunted with the whole Triller deal, then the loss to Kambosos, and now he's fighting in a ballroom in 2022. So you're worried that that's going to be his only fight. He's not going to be active. We're not going to see him again until 2023. People are out there saying, oh, Teofimo's playing the heel. Well, Teofimo doesn't have to play the heel. He doesn't. Teofimo was a likable character. A lot of the criticism he was getting was warranted. It was warranted. A lot of it was. I don't see Teofimo as a guy who was getting a lot of unfair criticism out there. I think a lot of it was being brought on it by himself. It's biblical. Pride comes before the fall. And there was a lot of prideful comments by him and his father that a lot of people, a lot of fighters, a lot of people who cover the sport thought were over the line. And there was pushback, naturally. Naturally, there was pushback. To me, Teofimo is still very much a net positive for the sport. Teofimo moving into 140 is a great thing for that division. Because although that division has been fun, it's been one of the best divisions in the sport to follow. Guys are mixing it up with each other. It's lacking that big star. And Teofimo has star power. No matter what you say about him, he's got star power. And this is the mixed bag, right? And this is where people on both sides get frustrated with me. People want me to just bash Teofimo, or people just want me to praise Teofimo. And with everybody, it's sort of a mixed bag, but especially with Teofimo because he's all over the place in every aspect. And how he talks and how he acts, but also when you beat Lomachenko and then you lose to Kambosos and you come back in a minus 3,000 fight against the Pedro Campa, and when you announce the fight with Pedro Campa, you're saying, no, I didn't want this fight. And he starts calling out 140 pounders on Twitter as alibis. And then the 140 pounders that he's calling out, call him on that and say, send me a contract. And then the next day they announce the fight with Pedro Campa. You have to ask questions. But right now at 140, he's a net positive because he brings excitement into the division. You have guys like Regis Prograis out there saying, yeah, he's talented. He looked okay there, but he can't mess with any of us at 140. Any of us at 140. And that's fair because he's unproven at 140 right now. So you say, I'm glad Teofimo is back at it on December 10th. Why? Active. Activity. Have to be active. Fighters all too often are fighting once per year. It's the biggest plague in boxing. I don't care what anybody says. People are going to say, throw out this problem, that problem. And boxing has its fair share of problems. But the biggest issue in boxing today, make no mistake about it. Let me look you in your eyes when I say this. The biggest problem in boxing today is inactivity. Inactivity. Because the issue is fighters are not building organic fan bases. It's all coming out off as artificial, and people sniff that out. 80s, 90s, early 2000s, fighters were marketable. They were all over the place. They were all over TV screens, commercials, marketing, all over it. Now, fighters are not building organic fan bases because they're not active enough. They're not putting in the work. Promotional companies are getting their network deals, long-term network deals. They don't have to compete with other promotional companies in order to get their cards on these networks. On top of that, they're taking the highest site fees, not promoting these fights and fighters properly. And the fighters aren't doing a good enough job to say, hey, I need to pick up the slack here. I need to go off and promote myself. None of that's happening. They're fighting once a year. And some of these guys are fighting once a year on pay-per-view. Exclusive country club sport we're building. So I'm glad Teofimo got a Bud Light deal. I'm glad he's active. And the good thing about the December 10 date is it's his date now. He's saying, I want to keep fighting after the Heisman Trophy show on ESPN. I'm an ESPN fighter. Heisman Trophy celebration on ESPN is a big deal. I want them to segue from Heisman to Teofimo Lopez every year. It's like Cotto on Puerto Rican Day Parade weekend, right? It's like Canelo on September on Mexican Independence Day weekend. It's like Mayweather and Oscar and then Canelo on Cinco de Mayo weekend. I want my own weekend. I want people to know that this is Teofimo's weekend. If you plan on doing something on this weekend, you better plan on counter programming and dealing with me because this is my spot. And I love that. I love what Teofimo's doing there. So it's very much a mixed bag. But I love the fact that Teofimo's coming back in December. He didn't give me the fight that I wanted in this fight. Didn't even watch it live. Watched it yesterday. There's nothing really to talk about with the fight. There was nothing new to learn here that we were going to learn. Right? There's nothing new we were going to learn. What are we going to learn off the Pedro Campa fight? What are we going to learn against a guy where you're a minus 3,000 favorite, and people who don't bet don't know how big, how wide of a gap that is? That's a major leaguer against a minor leaguer. That's what that is. We weren't going to learn anything. So that's what we got from Teofimo, but he's back in December. That's the good news. And I hope he gets back against the top 140 pounder. And guess what? I always hear, oh, this guy can't fight this guy because he's with this promotion, that promotional company. They can fix that on this fight. Teofimo supposedly wants to fight Ryan. Ryan supposedly wants to fight Teofimo. Get the damn fight made. I don't care that one's with Golden Boy, one's with Top Rank. I don't care that one's with DAZN, one's with ESPN. Make the fight. They're both free. They're both free, guys. They're both free. I'm tired of hearing the excuses. Ryan has said if I don't get the Tank fight, which he's not going to get, I'll move up. I'll stay at 140. I'll fight Teofimo Lopez. I'm here. He's there. We're both at 140. We're both free. Make the fight. Make the fight. Totally agree. And to top it off, Teofimo and Pop celebrating after the win like they won a championship. Crazy stuff. Yeah, but that's the stuff that rubs people the wrong way. But it's a mixed bag with Teofimo. And it's tough to talk about Teofimo right now because people get mad on both sides. That's where we're at. When you bring up the fact that he should be further along right now after the Lomachenko win, 2 years later, he's fighting in a ballroom. They're celebrating the Ciampa win like he won the Super Bowl. And then they'll tell you he's playing heel. Dude, he doesn't have to play heel. People didn't hate Teofimo like that. They didn't. Teofimo was a likable character when they were bringing him up. People liked him. People liked him after the Lomachenko win. This hatred out there that people think Teofimo is getting just out of the blue, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. All of it came from Teofimo. The number one pound for pound in some fights less than Blair Cobb's not the way to endear yourself to fans. Exactly. Exactly. You got to get more active. I think Teofimo gets another light touch in December, then spring 2023, he gets a title fight, possibly against Regis or Ramirez or something like that. And I would take him over Ramirez. I would take Regis over Teofimo. Make that fight. Yes. But there's no reason they can't make Teofimo versus Ryan Garcia right now. There's no reason they can't. I think the biggest issue in boxing is sanctioning bodies, promotional companies, and networks not having structure, policies, rules to work together to make fights happen. 100. And I'm glad you that's a great segue. And this is why I love my audience. This give me great segues. It's an intelligent audience, and it gives me a great segue. Real quick, though, let me do something real quick. Hold on one second, because I'm answering emails as I'm doing this show. Let's see. Let me do this. Let's take this joint right here. All right, I'm good right now. I'm going to screen share something to y'all right now. So give me a second. Share screen, Microsoft Edge. Don't want to share that. I don't want y'all seeing that. Okay. Y'all should have it up right now. Let's see. All right. So this is the WBC rankings currently. It was updated on Friday after the Tyson Fury news. You see that right there. Updated August 12th, 2022. And I made it big enough to where y'all should see it. Let me get this comment down real quick. So Tyson Fury is retired from boxing. Tyson Fury's retired from boxing. Do with that what you want. So Tyson Fury retires from boxing on Friday morning, 2 days after he hires a new trainer. So as he retires, we start to wonder what's going to happen to the landscape of boxing, because he has two belts. He has two belts. He has the WBC and he has the Ring Magazine belt. Why is the Ring Magazine belt important? Because it signifies the lineal champion. Why is the lineal champion important? Because the lineal champion signifies who is the guy who beat the guy, who beat the guy, who beat the guy, who beat the guy, who beat the guy. It's lineal. Back goes Klitschko. It goes all the way back. All the way back to the beginning of boxing. They trace it to the first heavyweight championship fight. That signifies the lineal champion. The guy who beat the guy, who beat the guy, who beat the guy. So Ring Magazine comes out, and I started asking the question on my podcast Friday. I said, since Tyson Fury retired, my first question is, does the Ring Magazine strip Tyson Fury of the lineal championship, the Ring Magazine belt, and put it up for Usyk versus Joshua next weekend, number 1 versus number 2 now in the division? Because if Tyson Fury is retired, he shouldn't be in the rankings. He shouldn't. We should be pulling his card. We should be saying, I'm calling your bluff. You're saying you're retired. We all think it's for leverage. None of us think that you're really retired, but guess what? You can't just stay retired and keep belts. You can't just, you can't retire and lay on belts. That shouldn't be what's happening. Just like I said about Leo Santa Cruz. Leo Santa Cruz shouldn't have been allowed to keep a belt for 3.5 years in a weight class he was not campaigning in. He hasn't fought in a weight class in 3.5 years, yet he's still able to keep a featherweight belt. It's disgusting. And this is why I love this comment, is because sanctioning bodies, structure, policies, rules, sticking to them, being transparent, being quick. Ring Magazine did it to their credit. That's why I like Ring Magazine. Some people don't. I love Ring Magazine. And I love what they did here. They said, you know what? You're retired. The next day, the very next day, give us the belt. We're giving it to the Usyk-Joshua winner. They're going to be the new lineal champion. You're retired. You're no longer in the rankings. We're taking you off the rankings because you are retired. And they've been consistent in that. If you look back at the rankings, when Mayweather was retired, he was no longer in the ring rankings. When Leo Santa Cruz wasn't campaigning in featherweight, they take him out the featherweight rankings. It's the most consistent belt if you think about it, and it's lineal and it's important. So the Ring Magazine takes him out the rankings. Now you have a new number 1 and number 2. Usyk 1, Joshua 2. Bing, that's the rules. That's the Ring Magazine lineal rules. When number 1 and number 2 in the division fight each other, that's for the lineal championship. The belt doesn't move hands until 1 and 2 in the division fight each other. It's the ring rules. 1 and 2. So the ring moves on that and says, we're not wasting any time. Give us the belt. Usyk-Joshua winner. It goes to them. So that adds to the intrigue of this fight. Not only is it for WBA, WBO, IBF, it's now for the lineal championship, and that's important. This is the baddest man on the planet, the lineal heavyweight king. This is the dude. Traditionally in the sport of boxing, the lineal heavyweight champion is the baddest man on the planet. This is that dude. So now Usyk versus Joshua signifies that as well. There's no longer a question. So I love what Ring did here in doing this. It's important. It's important for this. We want structure. We want this right here. We want this right here. Networks not having structure, policies, rules to work together, make big fights happen. This gives us structure, policies, rules to go by. It's not vague. This is clear. This is clear. When the lineal belt becomes vacant, it's not fought for again until 1 and 2 fight each other in the division. Usyk and Joshua just happen to be number 1 and number 2 fighting each other. So the Ring calls Fury's bluff and says, you're not using our belt for leverage in negotiations. Give it to us. This fight's next weekend, 1 versus 2. They're fighting for the belt. You just gave up that leverage. And Fury may have known this was coming. He may not even care. He may not even care. He's still got the leverage of the WBC belt as of right now. But the Ring saying, you're not using us for leverage. You're not using our belt for leverage. 1 versus 2 is fighting next weekend. The belt becomes vacant. It's on the line next weekend. Beautiful. But this mess right here that's on the screen is a mess. What this is the WBC rankings. And I'm about to pull up the rules in a minute. I had to go to page 17. See, this is what I do. I'm a freaking nerd. I went to the WBC rules. This is the WBC rankings. This is what makes it frustrating to watch, because WBC should have pulled their belt away from Tyson Fury immediately and said, you're not using our belt for leverage. You're retired. You're saying you're retired. And when you say you're retired, you're retired. You're not an active fighter. But instead, they're now giving Tyson Fury 2 weeks to decide, I guess, if he's really retired. Why 2 weeks? Well, we all know why 2 weeks. They're going to let Usyk versus AJ play out. And then they're going to give Tyson Fury a week to decide, hey, do I really want to do this? Do I want to change my mind after watching that fight? And then come back to the negotiation table, unretire after 2 weeks, and use that WBC belt for leverage and undisputed negotiations. That's what's happening here. But if you look at these rankings, what happens if this belt does become vacant in 2 weeks? Deontay Wilder's number 1, but look at Joe Joyce. Number 2. No, it says 2 and 3. One is just open. I don't know why they do that. But Deontay Wilder is at the top. Joe Joyce is right underneath him, and Joseph Parker is right underneath him. And look who has a silver belt. Joe Joyce. So Joe Joyce has a silver belt. Deontay Wilder doesn't have a belt. Joe Joyce is fighting the next guy in line, Joseph Parker, for the silver belt. Robert Helenius is sitting back there at number 10. He's going to fight Deontay Wilder, who is next in line in these rankings, according to these rankings, as a contender. So what do you do with that? So as this comment, I'm going to keep bringing this comment up because I love it. Structure, policies, rules. to make big fights happen. Structure, policies, rules. Keep that in mind. Structure, policy, rules. So what are the what's the structure, policy, rules when it comes to a vacant belt for the WBC? Let's share this screen again. Rules and regulations. And this is page 17, because once again, I'm a freaking nerd. And I pulled up these because I wanted to see what are they going to do with this belt if it becomes vacant. Filling a vacant title. If a title becomes vacant for any reason, the Board of Governors may, in its discretion, authorize whatever steps or actions deems necessary or appropriate to fill the title, including but not limited to. Let me pull this comment down real quick so I can get to this. Instituting a tournament or elimination contest among qualified challengers. B, ordering a championship contest between two qualified challengers. Or C, recognizing as champion the winner of previous elimination bout. So basically what that's saying in layman's terms is we don't know we're going to make the rules go along as we go. That's what that's telling you. That's as vague as you can possibly get. That's vague. There is nothing in that. Nothing. That's chopping down trees. They're just wasting paper. I mean, look at how vague that is. We can do whatever we want in whatever time frame we want. Why are we giving Tyson Fury 2 weeks? Just because we want to. Because we're the WBC. You're lucky we haven't given you a time frame. That's the WBC. I shouldn't even be giving you a time frame. I'm the WBC. You're the fans. Stay down there. We don't care about you anyway. You're lucky I'm even giving you a time frame. So they give you 2 weeks, and then they give you this nonsense right here. They can do whatever they want with this belt. So what's the most likely scenario? The most likely scenario to me is Tyson Fury comes out of retirement magically in 2 weeks, says, I want to keep my belt and try to negotiate. But if he doesn't do that, the belt becomes vacant. They can either have Joe Joyce versus Joseph Parker fight for the vacant belt. They can have Deontay Wilder versus Helenius fight for the vacant belt, or they can do a tournament. They can say, we'll do Wilder versus Helenius as a title eliminator, and we'll do Joe Joyce versus Joseph Parker for the silver belt and title eliminator, and the winners face each other. And by the way, that wouldn't be a bad scenario right there. But the issue that I have is there's no structure to this. There's nothing in place. They can just make up whatever they want to make up. They can say Deontay Wilder versus Helenius is for the belt, for the main belt. Just because. And then Joe Joyce and Joseph Parker are going to be like, wait a second. Joe Joyce is going to be like, I have the silver belt. Shouldn't I graduate and fight for the main belt? I got the silver belt already. I'm not coming off of a loss. Shouldn't I be fighting for it? And everybody's going to have a case because there's no structure. There's no real rules to this. And that's the issue. And you got to go. Here's another problem. You got to go to page 17. You got to be a freaking nerd like me. You got to be a freaking nerd to do a boxing podcast middle of the day on Monday. And before you do the podcast, search through page 17 of the WBA regulations to even see this. And this is what I talk about with the complexity of this sport and where we're at. There should be more structure to this. Yes, let's be more positive. On a positive note, the ring wasn't playing along with Fury's tactics and took the lineal from him. It's the right thing to do and make Usyk-Joshua for the title. Yes. And I would have loved to have seen the WBC say, you know what? We're not letting you use our belt for leverage either. We're taking it from you immediately. Usyk versus Joshua can fight for the title. They weren't going to do that. We all know that. We live in a dream world, but I would have loved to have seen this belt fight for all 5 belts when we include the Ring magazine. Wilder, I think, is number 1. Yep, that's right. But it makes it murkier when he's number 1, but you have another guy with the silver title who is number 2. It makes it all murky. Can you believe that some people are crying that Wilder, Helenius should be for the ring title? And this is what I'm saying, like, as far as, and I saw it on Twitter earlier, and this is another thing, like, I just stay away from when I see stuff like this. And on top of the mental illness stuff, I just logged on to Twitter this morning, and I just wanted to choose war, but I just stayed away from it, because you start to see people question why a dude can pull out a fight 5 days away, and then question it. And then you have people pushing back saying, oh, you're a terrible person for questioning mental illness, and stay away from that one. And then you have people questioning why Wilder's not fighting for the ring title. Like, dude, they have structured rules, and you should want structured rules, and you should want consistency, but you're fighting against consistency and structured rules just because you want your favorite fighter to fight for the ring belt. Your favorite fighter is not number 2. He's coming off of, in my opinion, 3 straight losses, 2 straight losses. In the Ring Magazine rankings, it goes by the Ring Magazine rankings. Number 1 is Joshua. Number 1 is Usyk. Number 2 is Joshua. They have their own rankings. They have their own belt. You don't like it? Come up with your own rankings. Finance your own belt. I don't know what to tell you. But Deontay Wilder is not going to be number 2 in the rankings. He's just not. He's just not. I don't know what to tell you. So, I mean, if you want to make the case that, yes, he lost to the lineal champion, though. He lost to the guy with the ring belt. But universally, I don't know of anybody who has Deontay Wilder number 2 in the rankings right now. I just don't know. I don't see it. So I don't see why people don't want structure. Usyk and Joshua are fighting next weekend in the biggest fight in boxing up until Canelo versus Triple G, and then possibly Spence versus Crawford. Why would you not want the ring belt on the line? Just because it doesn't favor your favorite fighter. So that's where we're at. The great news about this is not only because we have structure and transparency when it comes to the ring belt. They have rules, and they stood by them. They stood by them. They didn't do any favors for Tyson Fury. They didn't say, hey, we have a good relationship with Tyson Fury. Let's do his bidding and let him keep the belt for a couple weeks to see what's going to happen. No, they said Usyk and Josh were going to fight for it. Let them fight for it. So that's good. That's good. Everybody should be saying that's good. But on top of that, we're going to have a lineal champion who is stable. Who is stable. When I watch Usyk and Joshua, when I watch how they move, I see stable guys who want to fight for legacy, and who, if they become undisputed champion, they will stick around to defend it. When I see Wilder and Fury, I love the trilogy that they gave us. I appreciate it. Even though they stood in the way of undisputed, I appreciate the trilogy they gave us. I appreciate them as a fighters. They've both been by far net positive to the sport, but unstable. I don't believe that Tyson Fury, if he becomes undisputed, he'll stick around. He'll use those belts as leverage. He'll constantly posture. He'll say he's going to fight a tough man, a UFC guy, a trilogy with Chisora. He's hiring a new trainer. Then he's retiring. I don't want that from my lineal heavyweight champion. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And I have Wilder and Fury people calling me all kind of names on Twitter right now. But I have to be consistent. And I like both guys. That's the hard thing about this. Like, I like both of them. I like all 4 of them. I like Joshua and Usyk. It's a tough part about this. But I don't want an unstable lineal heavyweight champion, because the lineal heavyweight champion matters. It's one of the faces of the sport quite naturally. It's tradition. It's the baddest man on the planet, going back to the very beginning of structured combat sports. So Usyk and Joshua gives me a much better possibility of a guy sticking around and defending all belts as the undisputed heavyweight champion than Deontay Wilder versus Robert Helenius winner, going on to fight the winner of Usyk Joshua, and then Wilder end up picking it up, and then he might just disappear and make an R&B album. I don't know. I want what's best for the sport, man. I want what's best for the sport. So I like what Ring did here. Hopefully the WBC moves, gets things going. And that's all I got with that. But mixed bag as well. This is a mixed bag show, is what this was. Broner, overall net positive for the sport. I like him, but this is just nonsense. This is nonsense. It's complete nonsense. And once again, my message to you out there is don't even try to debate the dudes, the mental illness dudes out there, because you're not going to win. Don't even bring that topic up on Twitter. You're going to get destroyed. Teofimo mixed bag. He beats a heavy bag. He beats a sparring partner in a main event. We're not going to learn much from that, but he'll be back in December. That's the good news. Activity, 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 and he's got his own weekend. That's a beautiful thing. Structure, structure. And when we talk about structure, Ring Magazine did a good job. Consistent rules, transparency, structure. They're giving us the rightful fight for their belt next weekend. They're moving quick. WBC, not as much. WBC is a mess. They're a sanctioning body. They're frustrating to watch because they're so all over the place and inconsistent. And we're not going to get an answer as to what happens with WBC belt for God only knows how long. On that note, man, God bless. See y'all again tomorrow. Peace.